Okay, so we've seen that we can embed expressions directly inside of JSX using the curly braces. Whatever is in here will be treated as JavaScript, it will be evaluated, and then the resulting value will be embedded right there. So whatever props.emoji is will be placed where those curly braces currently are. In Jinja, we saw something very, very similar where we could embed a Python expression directly inside of a template. And in Jinja, we could also do things like add loops and conditionals. In JSX, we can do the same thing. So we'll see a couple different ways of writing conditionals within a JSX template or within a component. First, let's talk about what a valid component can return. So the things that a component can render that React considers valid are a single DOM element, like we've already talked about, one JSX element. It can contain other stuff, it can have children, but only one topmost element, like a div, a h1, a button, whatever it is. An array of DOM elements or objects, which is something we haven't talked about, but we will shortly, or null. Undefined is not okay. So you could have a component that for some reason just returns null. So I'll just comment this out here, and if I return null for animal, here's my page, no problem. We don't see anything being rendered. If I try and return undefined, big problem. Lots of red. Nothing was returned from render. This usually means a return statement is missing, or to render nothing, make sure you return null. Okay, so we'll come back to the array thing that I mentioned, but we've already seen, usually we're going to return a single topmost element. But inside of a given component and inside of whatever content we're returning, we can kind of put whatever logic we want. If we were writing a lottery component, here's a very simple lottery component. You pass in a prop that says whether you win or not. It's called winner. You hard code it. There's not much of a game to it. So you pass in true for winner, and we return you win. If you don't, we return you lose. So this would be the simplest way to have a conditional in a component, where we just return one thing or another. But often that's not how your components will work. This is great if you have two completely separate standalone pieces of content you want to return. But often we'll have something like this. We have content that is standard for all animals every time this component is rendered. But let's say that we also pass in a prop called isCute. So we'll pass in isCute. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff we're not actually using. isCute equals, and we'll set it to be true. I need to make sure I'm closing this correctly. There we go. So if we wanted to selectively render something based off of isCute, maybe a check mark, an emoji check mark, which I'll try and pull up here. Let's see. Emoji picker, command, option, no, control, space. Okay. We'll do a check mark. So we'll have something like an li isCute is set to either this or a x. There we go, this x. So it will be one of these two, depending on the prop isCute. In order to do that, this approach doesn't really help me very much, where I'm just returning two distinct things. I guess I could duplicate this entire thing and say, if isCute, return this, else return this, but use the check mark or use the X. Instead, what's really common in React is to use the ternary operator. And we can do this directly in line inside of our template, inside of the JSX that we're returning. So in order to make it work, we have to escape JSX. We have to say, hey, this is actually JavaScript. Props.winner, is that true or false? If it's true, this is what should be displayed. If it's false, this should be displayed. So this is really, really common. You'll see it all the time in React. We could add that in here. Props.isCute, question mark for the ternary operator. If that's true, we want that. Otherwise, we want that. However, there's a problem here. This is invalid. This is considered JavaScript inside of these braces. Out here, you can think of it as HTML. Technically, it's not actually HTML, but whatever's valid in HTML is valid here. But when we have these braces, we're now working inside of JavaScript. That's what those braces are for. They signify, hey, this is actually JavaScript. Don't treat this as JSX. Evaluate this as JS. But this isn't valid JS. It needs to be in quotes because it needs to be a string. So now everything should work. We do need to pass in props.isCute. Technically, we don't have to. It will just be undefined, which means we'll end up with the X. So if we check out our app.js, I have one animal where I've set is cute to true, and I could set the other one, which is sad because definitely Patrick the red fox, he definitely is cute, but I'll set it to false so we have some variety here. It's a lie, but whatever, we'll go with it. I refresh my page, and now we have two different outcomes. Is cute was true here for Stevie Chicks, my own chicken. I can't say she's not cute, so we get the check mark. Down here, Patrick the red fox is cute gives us that X because we set it to false. One quick note about Boolean props. You can pass true or false as we're doing here, but something you'll see relatively commonly is to do this and not pass in a value. Just the mere presence of is cute is going to set it to be true, and if we don't pass it in, it will be undefined. So are we still printing our props? Let's double check here. All right, so I'm going to refresh. In this first example, is cute is set to true, even though I never explicitly said it is true. But this is a Boolean attribute. They exist in HTML, like the checked attribute. If you've ever made a checkbox, you'll pass in checked and you don't set it equal to anything. Same idea here. And if it's missing, it doesn't get set to false. It's just not there in the props. So our ternary operator right here is going to evaluate this to be either true or undefined. Undefined is falsy, so we end up with the X anyway. So two different options there. You can pass in the Boolean explicitly, like we did early on, or we can just pass this without a corresponding value, and React will treat it as a true prop, a Boolean prop set to true. So if your conditional logic is truly just binary, yes or no, this or that, a ternary operator works great a lot of the time if the logic is pretty straightforward. If it's short and it fits, it doesn't have to be on one line, but if it's simple enough to put in your actual JSX, you'll put it right there. That's pretty common. You'll see it a lot in React. If you're not really comfortable with the ternary operator, you will be by the end of all this React content, just because it's really commonly used in React. I'm not sure exactly why it is. I mean, it's short, but for whatever reason, it's been embraced by the community, and you'll see it a lot. But sometimes you need to write some logic that's a bit longer. Even if it is just a if and an else, a yes or no, sometimes the actual condition is longer than just a single variable, like in the props.winner. Here's an example where we have a slots component. It's super silly. You pass in three different symbols, S1, S2, and S3, and then if they are the same, we'll display winner. If they're not the same, we display lose, win or lose rather. So the actual logic to check if they're all the same looks like this. Props.s1 equals props.s2 and props.s2 equals props.s3. That's at least one way of writing it. And that would be kind of a lot. It's a long conditional to put directly inside of our paragraph here in the curly braces. So another strategy is to make a variable that is a true or false Boolean value. You can declare that first, and then down in your return value, where you're actually writing your JSX, you can reference that variable, which should be a Boolean, true or false. So this is a way of shortening the logic by really just moving it. So we're not changing the logic in any way. We're just putting the condition first, storing that in a variable, and then using that variable. Sometimes you may have more variety in your logic rather than just a if and an else. What if there was an else if? There are multiple conditions. There are a couple approaches you can take. Let's write a component to demonstrate this. So we'll make a, what should we call this? A bouncer component, like a bar bouncer. It doesn't exist yet, where we pass in an age. So age will be a number. Let's say it is 19. And the logic in bouncer is going to check if, first of all, if age is less than 18, we're not going to let you in. If age is greater than 21, then you can drink. This is for, at least in the US, some bars at least, actually not very many, but some clubs and venues will let you in if you're between 18 and 21, but you can't drink. And then if you are 21, you can drink. And if you're a child, if you're considered, well, if you're less than 18, you can't come in, period. So there are three different scenarios there. Let's define a bouncer component, bouncer.js, and then define it up here, const bouncer equals props, and then we'll return something. Maybe we'll do something like, how about a paragraph? Oh, forgot that we don't have autocomplete in here, or at least not JSX. So a paragraph, which will have maybe a bold tag with the bouncer. So it'll be like a little script. The bouncer asks you a question. How old are you? And let's put the bouncer colon inside of a bold tag. And then on the next line, we'll have the same thing with a bold tag. It will be like a little script. So we'll have you. And then your age. So I'll just indent this to make it slightly easier to read. You will say props.age. I am props.age years old. And then down here, we'll have some message that changes depending on that age. So a ternary operator is not going to really work because we have multiple conditions. Are you less than 18? Are you between 18 and 21? Or are you greater than 21? Different outcomes, 3 different outcomes. So what we could do is just make a variable up here and go with const, what do we want to call this? Message, response, reply maybe, equals. And we'll probably do a let reply and not give it an initial value. And then add our logic. So if props.age is less than 18, we'll set reply, just do this on multiple lines, reply equals, sorry kid, you can't come in. And then we'll have our next condition, which will be an else if props.age is less than 21. We'll set reply equal to, you can come in, but no drinking. And then our last condition will be reply equals, come in, you can drink. Okay, so there we go. We now have a variable that contains our response. It contains the actual string that we're going to add in, and we can embed that right here, reply. Okay, kind of a long-winded explanation there, a long-winded demo, but it should work. Let's see if it actually does work. So let's render a couple bouncers. We'll have someone who is 19, we'll have 11, and we'll have 39. And then let's make sure that we actually add in our bouncer as a script in our index, bouncer.js, refresh the page here, scroll way down. Here's our first one. How old are you? I am 19 years old. You can come in, but no drinking. How old are you? I'm 11 years old. Sorry, kid, you can't come in. Bouncer, how old are you? I'm 39 years old. Come in, you can drink. Now, we're not limited to just using strings, traditional strings of text. We can actually store JSX expressions. We can store this HTML looking stuff in a variable. So I'll show a quick example of that. I have a GIF URL on my clipboard right there. And if you can drink, if you can come in, we will render a GIF. It's just an image tag. And I think the first thing that I'm going to do is, instead of come on, you can drink, let's put this inside of a, I don't know, maybe a paragraph tag, its own paragraph tag. And we can put this on multiple lines. And then after that, let's put an image, close it, and then we'll set the source equal to the thing on my clipboard. So now we have reply equal to this paragraph. It says come on or come in, you can drink, and we have an image tag. And then down here, I'm going to move that after, so only bouncer is bolded. So in these two cases, it's kind of weird just to have regular text right there, but it will work. So in these two cases, we're just putting a string right there. It's already inside of a paragraph. But in this third scenario, if you are 21 or older, we will add a paragraph in with some text with an image. And this is just to demonstrate that we can write more complex variables that actually store not just a string of text, but our JSX elements. If I refresh, there we go. So it looks horrible, but you can come in. We're showing this image, and that's kind of all I want to show anyway. So to summarize this, I'm on the React docs. If you go to the conditional rendering page under main concepts, they go over pretty much the same stuff we just talked about. There are multiple approaches you can take. We started by seeing this, where you have an if and an else, and you just return two completely different things, in this case, two different components. You also can do something like this here, where you store a variable, and then you render that variable. This is basically what we just did. Button equals something else, and then at the end, we render button. That's what we did here. And then further down, they talk about using the ternary operator, question mark, colon, what we started out with. So multiple ways of rendering things conditionally. You can kind of pick and choose what you prefer, but be prepared to see a lot of the ternary operator. Next up, we'll talk about looping.